There are moments, rare moments, when time itself seems to pause, when something unseen presses into the atmosphere, and your spirit feels it before your mind can explain it. This is one of those moments. And June 22nd is not just another date on a calendar. No, this day has been circled in the spirit long before you ever woke up this morning. There is a reason you feel different today. There is a reason your heart has been unsettled, your thoughts deeper, your awareness sharper. Something is shifting. Something is breaking. Something is being rearranged in your favor right now. And here is the truth you weren't supposed to realize so quickly. They were watching you. Yes, they were watching you in your lowest moments. Watching when you had to stretch your last resources. Watching when you stayed silent instead of defending yourself. Watching when you walked away instead of begging to be understood. They thought your silence meant defeat. They thought your patience meant weakness. They thought your endurance meant you had no other choice. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't see, is that heaven was watching too. You see, while they were waiting for you to break, God was building something behind the scenes. While they expected you to beg, God was preparing a table. While they whispered, doubted, and assumed your story was ending, God had already written a reversal so powerful, so undeniable, that it would leave them speechless. And here's where it gets deeper, because this isn't just about people. This isn't just about what they said or what they did. No, this is about a spiritual setup, a divine interruption, a moment where everything that looked like delay was actually alignment. Have you ever gone through a season where nothing made sense? Where doors kept closing, people kept changing, and the support you thought you had suddenly disappeared? Have you ever felt like you were being pushed into a corner, forced into silence, left to figure things out alone? That wasn't random. That was positioning. Because there are some blessings God will not release in private. There are some victories that must be witnessed. There are some tables that must be set, not in hiding but in front of those who misjudged you. And right now, yes, right now as you are listening to this, something is being arranged. You cannot see it yet. You cannot touch it yet. But you can feel it. There is a shift in your spirit. A quiet confidence rising. A strange peace settling in places that used to feel heavy. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. Because June 22nd marks the beginning of a visible turnaround. Not just internal healing but external elevation. Not just silent growth but undeniable evidence. The kind of shift where people who overlooked you will suddenly notice. The kind of shift where those who doubted you will have no choice but to watch you rise. But listen carefully, because this is important. Before God sets the table, He prepares the person. Before the spotlight comes, there is a season of stretching. Before the honor is revealed, there is a process of humbling. And many people misunderstand this part. They think the struggle means they are losing. They think the silence means they are forgotten. They think the delay means they are denied. But you are about to understand something different. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. Prepared to sit at a table you didn't have to beg for. Prepared to receive what you didn't have to manipulate. Prepared to walk into rooms where your presence alone becomes the answer. And the same ones, yes, the same ones who expected you to fold, to chase, to plead, will become witnesses to what God is about to do in your life. This is why you had to go through it quietly. This is why you couldn't explain it to everyone. This is why it felt like you were carrying something no one else could understand. Because this was never meant to be validated by people, it was meant to be orchestrated by God. So now, the question is not if something is about to happen. The question is, are you ready to sit at the table? Because once it is set, everything changes. Type "I am ready" in the comments if you feel this shift. Blessing code 2222 is now being activated over your life. There is something deeply unsettling about being watched while you are at your lowest, not by strangers, but by people who know your name, your story, your past. And whether you want to admit it or not, there were eyes on you during your hardest moments. Not all of them were rooting for your healing. Not all of them were praying for your breakthrough. Some of them were quietly waiting to see how far you would fall. They saw the seasons when your energy changed. They noticed when you became quieter, when your responses became shorter, when your presence wasn't as loud as it used to be. But instead of asking what you were carrying, instead of stepping in with compassion, they stepped back with assumptions. They began to interpret your silence as weakness. They began to believe that what you were going through was the beginning of your downfall, not the middle of your transformation. And what makes it even more intense is this: you never gave them a show. You didn't broadcast your struggles. You didn't announce every hardship. You didn't expose every tear, every sleepless night, every moment where you had to hold yourself together when everything inside you wanted to collapse. You chose dignity over drama. You chose silence over explanation. And in doing that, you confused them. Because they expected noise. They expected reaction. They expected you to fight for validation. But you didn't. And that silence, that stillness became the very thing they misread. They thought you were losing. They thought you had nothing left. They thought this was the part of your story where you would come back asking for help, asking for support, asking for recognition. They expected you to bend. They expected you to return to them in a posture of need. But what they failed to understand is that your silence was not emptiness, it was endurance. It was strength being built in places they could not see. Because while they were watching from a distance, forming opinions based on what they didn't understand, you were in a different kind of battle. A quiet one. A spiritual one. The kind that doesn't make noise but changes everything. The kind where you are learning how to stand without applause, how to move without approval, how to trust God without visible evidence. And the kind of growth that doesn't look impressive at first glance. It looks like withdrawal. It looks like isolation. It looks like stillness. But what they didn't realize is that every moment you chose not to react, you were gaining control. Every time you refused to explain yourself, you were strengthening your identity. Every time you stayed silent instead of defending your position, you were aligning yourself with something greater than public opinion. You were learning how to stand on truth even when no one clapped for it. And here is where everything begins to shift. Because the same people who watch you struggle will soon watch you rise. The same eyes that scanned your life for signs of failure will be forced to witness evidence of favor. And the most powerful part of it all is this: you won't have to announce anything. Your life will speak. Your elevation will speak. Your peace will speak. Because when God moves in your life, He doesn't need your explanation to validate it. He doesn't need your defense to justify it. What He does is undeniable. What He does is visible. What He does carries a weight that no opinion can override. And that is exactly what is being prepared right now. There is a reversal coming that will silence every assumption. There is a shift coming that will make people rethink everything they believed about you. Not because you argued with them. Not because you proved them wrong. But because God stepped in and changed the narrative in a way only He could. But you must understand this part clearly. Do not go back to explain yourself. Do not feel the need to revisit those moments just to make others understand your journey. Because the same silence that protected you then will preserve you now. Not everyone is meant to understand your process. Not everyone is qualified to interpret your growth. and not everyone deserves access to the version of you that survived what they only observed. You were not struggling for their entertainment. You were being shaped for your assignment. And now as June 22nd unfolds, the roles are shifting. They are no longer watching you fall. They are about to watch you be lifted. Type I remain silent, but God spoke for me in the comments. Blessing code 3333 is now being activated over your life. There was a season you walked through that did not feel fair, did not feel deserved, and certainly did not feel like it had any clear purpose. It was the kind of season where you questioned everything quietly. You questioned your path, your decisions, your worth, and even your faith at times. Not because you stopped believing, but because nothing around you seemed to reflect what you were believing for. It felt like you were being reduced, stripped, and lowered in ways you could not explain to anyone else. And what made it even heavier was that while you were going through it, others were watching without understanding the weight of what you were carrying. This was the season of humbling. But it was not humiliation. It was not punishment. And it was never meant to break you. You see, there is a difference between being broken and being refined. Brokenness leaves you empty and defeated. Refinement, on the other hand, reshapes you, strengthens you, and prepares you for something greater than what you could have handled before. And what you went through was refinement, even if it felt like loss at the time. Because in that season, things were taken away from you that you once depended on. Certain people became distant. Certain opportunities disappeared. Certain comforts were removed. And it forced you into a space where you had to rely on something deeper. You had to rely on faith without evidence. You had to trust direction without confirmation. You had to keep moving without applause. And that is not easy. That kind of process will make you feel like you are being overlooked. It will make you feel like you are being left behind while others move ahead. It will make you question why your journey feels harder, slower, quieter. But what you could not see in that moment was that God was doing internal work that external success could never accomplish. He was removing the need for validation from people who were never assigned to affirm you. He was breaking your attachment to outcomes that were too small for your calling. He was teaching you how to stand in your identity without needing constant reassurance. And most importantly, He was preparing your character to handle the very thing you have been praying for. Because what is coming next in your life cannot be sustained by the version of you that existed before that season. You needed that humbling. You needed that stretching. You needed that quiet space where everything felt uncertain, because that is where your roots went deeper. That is where your strength became real. That is where your faith stopped being words and became your foundation. And while you were being shaped, others misunderstood the process. They thought you were falling behind. They thought you were losing momentum. They thought you were going through something you wouldn't recover from. But what they didn't realize is that you were being positioned, not reduced. Because God will often lower you before He lifts you. Not to embarrass you, but to build you in a way that elevation cannot destroy you. He will allow seasons where you have less, speak less, show less, not because you are forgotten, but because you are being prepared for something that requires more discipline, more discernment, and more stability than you had before. And now, that season is coming to an end. You are stepping out of the phase where everything felt hidden, quiet, and uncertain. And you are stepping into a phase where what was built in private is about to be revealed in public. But here is what you must remember as this shift happens. Do not resent the process that prepared you. Because that very season that felt uncomfortable is the reason you will be able to sit at the table without losing yourself. It is the reason you will be able to receive without becoming prideful. It is the reason you will be able to stand firm when attention comes your way, You were not being broken. You were being built. And now, as June 22nd unfolds, the weight you carried in silence is turning into strength that will be seen. The lessons you learned in isolation are becoming wisdom that will guide you. The discipline you developed in the dark is becoming the stability that will sustain you in the light. This is the turning point. The humbling season is over. The revealing season has begun. Type I was refined, not broken in the comments. Lesson code 4444 is now being activated over your life. As this message settles into your spirit, understand this truth. Every word you've just received is not meant to stop with you. It is meant to flow through you. There are others right now standing in the same quiet battle you just came out of, waiting for light to reach them. And when you sow into this mission, you become part of that divine flow, like a river carrying healing into places still covered in darkness. The word declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And this is not just scripture. It is God speaking directly into your moment, inviting you to participate in something eternal. I feel this deeply. I am being called to act now, to release what I can, to help this message reach the one who is about to give up. This is not just support. This is obedience. This is not just giving. This is planting into souls, into breakthrough, into eternal impact. As you give through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, know that heaven sees it as a seed that will return multiplied into your life. Step into this moment. Sow with purpose. Activate the harvest. There is something happening right now that you cannot fully see yet, but your spirit can sense it. It is subtle, but it is undeniable. It is quiet, but it is powerful. While you have been focused on surviving, on healing, on simply making it through each day, heaven has been working on something far greater than your current circumstances. A table is being prepared. Not later. Not someday. Right now. And this is where everything begins to shift in a way that will no longer be hidden. Because the kind of table God prepares is not ordinary. It is not a small opportunity. It is not a temporary fix. It is a position. It is a placement. It is a visible manifestation of everything you endured in silence. And what makes this moment so significant is not just the table itself, but where it is being set. It is being set in front of them. In front of the same people who misread your struggle. In front of the same people who expected your downfall. In front of the same people who assumed your silence meant you had nothing left. The very ones who watched you in your lowest season are about to witness you in a position they cannot deny. And here is the part that requires your full understanding. You did not earn this table by proving yourself to them. You did not secure this position by convincing anyone of your worth. You did not arrive here by competing, explaining, or defending your journey. This table is being prepared by God. That means it carries authority that cannot be challenged. It carries favor that cannot be blocked. It carries a level of access that no opinion, no misunderstanding, and no past perception can take away from you. And when God prepares something for you, it comes with a certainty that removes all doubt. But before you sit at this table, something must be clear within you. You must understand that this is not about revenge. This is not about making anyone feel what you felt. This is not about proving people wrong or seeking validation from those who doubted you. Because if you approach this moment with that mindset, you will miss the true purpose of what God is doing. This is about alignment. This is about restoration. This is about stepping into what was always meant for you, without carrying the weight of who misunderstood you. Because the truth is, when God sets a table, He is not just providing provision. He is establishing position. He is placing you in environments, opportunities, and spaces that reflect the work that has already been done within you. And that kind of placement cannot be faked. It cannot be rushed. It cannot be manipulated. It must be prepared. And that is exactly what has been happening behind the scenes. While you were being humbled, the table was being built. While you were being refined, the details were being arranged. While you were learning how to stand without recognition, God was preparing a place where your presence would be recognized without effort. And now, the moment is approaching where preparation meets revelation. But listen carefully, because this is where many people lose focus. When the table is finally visible, when the opportunity opens, when the shift becomes undeniable, there will be a temptation to look back, to think about who doubted you, to remember who walked away, to revisit the moments where you felt overlooked or misunderstood. And in that moment, you must choose differently. You must choose to sit at the table with peace, not pride. You must choose to receive what is in front of you without being distracted by what is behind you. Because the same discipline that carried you through the quiet season must now carry you through the visible one. You cannot afford to let old emotions disrupt new elevation. You cannot allow past misunderstandings to interfere with present opportunities. You cannot carry the need for validation into a space that was never built for it. This table is not for explanation. It is for occupation. It is for authority. It is for alignment with everything God hath been preparing you for. And as June 22nd continues to unfold, you will begin to notice the shift more clearly. Doors will begin to open in ways that feel unexpected. Conversations will begin to change. Opportunities will begin to align without force. And in those moments, you will recognize something familiar. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having everything figured out, but the kind of peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be. That is how you will know the table is yours. Not because of who is watching, but because of how grounded you feel when you arrive. And when you sit down, when you finally step into what has been prepared for you, understand this: it is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a new level of responsibility, a new level of visibility, and a new level of purpose. But this time, you are ready, because you were prepared in silence. Type "I will sit in peace," not pride, in the comments. Lesson code 5555 is now being activated over your life. There was a time, not too long ago, when you felt like you were in a position of asking, waiting, and hoping for things to come together. A time when it seemed like you were always reaching outward, trying to secure what you needed, trying to hold things together with limited resources, limited support, and limited clarity. It felt like you were constantly on the edge, constantly calculating your next move, constantly wondering if what you had would be enough to get you through. And whether you said it out loud or not, there were moments where it felt uncomfortably close to begging, not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually, even relationally. Begging for understanding, begging for consistency, begging for doors to open, begging for things to finally align. But what you didn't realize during that season is that you were never meant to stay in that position. That posture was temporary. It was situational. It was part of the process, but it was never your identity. Because there is a major difference between a season of need and a life of lack. And what you were experiencing was a season, not a sentence. Now, as this shift unfolds, you are being moved out of that posture completely. Not gradually, not subtly, but definitively. There is a transition taking place where you are no longer the one chasing. You are becoming the one being positioned. You are no longer the one asking, you are becoming the one receiving. And that shift is not just external. It begins internally. Because before abundance shows up in your life, it must be recognized within your mindset. You cannot step into overflow while still thinking from a place of scarcity. You cannot receive confidently while still feeling like you have to earn every opportunity through struggle. You cannot walk in abundance while still expecting things to fall apart. And this is why the shift you are experiencing right now feels different. It is not just about things changing around you. It is about something changing within you. You are starting to think differently. You are starting to expect differently. You are starting to carry yourself differently, even if your external situation has not fully caught up yet. That is the beginning of abundance. Because abundance is not just about having more. It is about knowing you are no longer in a position of lack. It is about understanding that what is coming to you is not luce adikakvi nor este yuri, not luck, not coincidence. It is alignment. It is the result of everything that has been building behind the scenes. And here is what makes this moment so powerful. The same people who thought you would remain in that position of need are about to see you in a position of overflow. The same ones who expected you to come back asking will now see you standing without asking at all. And the shift will be so clear, so undeniable, that it will force a reevaluation of everything they believed about you. But again, this is not about them. This is about you stepping fully into a new reality. A reality where you are no longer operating from survival mode. A reality where you are no longer making decisions based on fear of losing what little you have. A reality where you are no longer settling for less just to maintain temporary comfort. You are stepping into stability. You are stepping into provision. You are stepping into a flow where things begin to meet you instead of you constantly chasing them. And this does not mean everything will instantly become perfect. It does not mean there will be no challenges. But what it does mean is that you will no longer feel like you are fighting just to stay afloat. You will feel supported. You will feel aligned. You will feel like there is something working with you instead of everything working against you. And that feeling, that sense of alignment, is what marks the transition from begging to abundance. But there is something you must guard carefully as you enter this new space. Do not carry the mindset of your past season into your new one. Do not continue to think small when you are being positioned for something greater. Do not hesitate to receive because you are used to struggling. Because sometimes the hardest part of stepping into abundance is believing that you belong there. And you do. You belong in rooms where you are valued. You belong in positions where you are supported. You belong in opportunities where you do not have to prove your worth repeatedly. And the more you accept that, the easier this transition will become. So as June 22nd continues to unfold, pay attention to the shift, not just around you, but within you. Pay attention to how your thoughts are changing. Pay attention to how your expectations are rising. Pay attention to how your confidence is growing without force. Because that is the signal. You are no longer in the same place. You are no longer the same person. You are no longer operating from the same level. The season of begging is over. The season of abundance has begun. Type "I receive my abundance" in the comments. Blessing code 6666 is now being activated over your life. There is something about truth that cannot stay hidden forever. It may be delayed. It may be covered for a season. It may even appear as if it will never surface. But eventually, without force, without confrontation, without you having to say a word, it reveals itself. And what is about to unfold in your life is not just elevation, it is exposure. Because while you were focused on surviving your own process, There were things happening around you that you did not fully see. Conversations that did not include you. Assumptions that were made about you. Intentions that were not as pure as they appear. And the truth is, some people did not misunderstand you by accident. Some people chose to misinterpret you because it made them more comfortable with where they were in their own lives. They needed you to look like you were struggling. They needed your silence to mean weakness. They needed your distance to mean failure. Because if they acknowledged your growth, they would have to confront their own stagnation. And so, quietly, subtly, without direct confrontation, they formed narratives about you. Narratives that were incomplete. Narratives that were convenient. Narratives that allowed them to stay in their comfort while assuming you were falling apart. But what they did not realize is this: truth does not need defense when it is aligned with God. And now, as the shift continues, those hidden intentions are beginning to surface, not through arguments, not through exposure by force, but through contrast. Because when God begins to elevate you, He does not just lift you. He reveals everything that was never aligned with you. And this is where it becomes undeniable. You will begin to notice changes in how people respond to you. Some will become distant without explanation. Some will act differently when your presence shifts. Some will suddenly become supportive in ways that feel unfamiliar. And others will remain silent, unsure of how to respond to what they are witnessing. This is not random. This is exposure. Because when your life begins to reflect favor, it forces truth to the surface. It forces people to confront what they said, what they believed, and how they treated you. Not because you brought it up, but because your reality no longer matches the narrative they created. And that is where discomfort begins. Not for you, but for them. Because now, they are faced with something they cannot control. They cannot explain your elevation away. They cannot reduce your progress to coincidence. They cannot continue to see you the same way they did before. And this is where you must be careful. Because exposure can tempt you to respond. It can tempt you to revisit conversations, to correct misunderstandings, to finally say everything you held back during your silent season. It can make you feel like now is the time to explain yourself, to set the record straight, to reclaim your narrative. But understand this clearly: you do not need to expose what God is already revealing. You do not need to defend what is already being demonstrated. You do not need to correct what truth is already correcting on its own. Because the power of this moment is not in what you say, it is in what is being seen. Your consistency is speaking. Your peace is speaking. Your growth is speaking. And most importantly, your elevation is speaking in ways that no explanation ever could. This is why silence is still your strength. Not because you have nothing to say, but because everything that needs to be understood is already being made clear. And as this continues, you will begin to feel something shift within you as well. A release, a detachment, a sense that you no longer need to be understood by everyone. Because clarity does not always come through conversation. Sometimes, clarity comes through distance. Sometimes, clarity comes through observation. Sometimes, clarity comes through watching someone become everything you thought they could not be. And that is what is happening now. The same people who formed quiet conclusions about you are now being confronted with a reality that challenges everything they believed. And you did not have to fight for it. You did not have to argue for it. You did not have to prove anything. God is revealing it. So as this exposure unfolds, remain grounded. Do not let pride enter where peace has been established. Do not let the need for validation replace the alignment you have worked so hard to maintain. Because this moment is not about being right. It is about being ready. Ready for what comes next. Ready for the doors that are opening. Ready for the table that is being set. Because once truth is revealed, alignment follows. And not everyone will be able to move forward with you. Type I let God reveal the truth in the comments. Blessing code 7777 is now being activated over your life. There is a kind of elevation that people can predict. The kind that follows a visible path, where every step makes sense, where progress is measured, expected, and easily explained. But what is happening in your life right now is not that kind of promotion. This is not something that people saw coming. This is not something that can be traced back to a single decision, a single connection, or a single moment. This is a spiritual promotion. And by its very nature, it disrupts expectations. Because while others were measuring your progress based on what they could see, God was measuring your readiness based on what you carried within. While people were watching your external circumstances, heaven was watching your internal posture, your patience, your restraint, your ability to remain grounded when everything around you felt uncertain. And now, the reward for that unseen work is beginning to surface in ways that cannot be predicted or explained. This is why it feels sudden. This is why it feels unexpected. This is why it may even feel overwhelming at first. Because spiritual promotion does not follow human timing. It follows divine readiness. And readiness is not always visible until the moment it is revealed. You may find yourself stepping into spaces you did not plan for. Opportunities may begin to open that you did not pursue. People may begin to recognize something in you that they previously overlooked. And the most confusing part of it all is that it will not feel forced. It will feel natural. It will feel aligned. It will feel like something that was always meant to happen, even though it arrived without warning. That is the nature of divine elevation. It does not ask for permission. It does not wait for approval. It simply unfolds. And this is where many people struggle to understand what is happening to you. Because from their perspective, the shift will not make sense. They will try to connect your current position to your past circumstances, and they will not find a clear explanation. They will try to understand how you moved from where you were to where you are, and they will come up short. Not because there is no reason, but because the reason exists beyond what they can see. You were promoted in places they could not access. You were elevated in moments they did not witness. You were prepared in ways they did not understand. And now, the result is visible, even if the process was not. This is why you must be careful not to question your own elevation. Because when something happens suddenly, there is a tendency to second-guess it, to wonder if you are ready, to feel like you need to catch up to the position you have been placed in. But understand this clearly. If God has positioned you there, then you are already equipped for it. You are not behind. You are not unprepared. You are not out of place. You are exactly where your process has led you. And the same discipline that carried you through your quiet season will now sustain you in your visible one. But there is another layer to this promotion that you must recognize. Not everyone will celebrate it. Not everyone will understand it. Not everyone will be able to accept it. Because your elevation will challenge the narratives they created about you. It will disrupt the expectations they had for your life. It will force them to confront the possibility that they were wrong about you. And not everyone is ready to face that. Some will distance themselves. Some will remain silent. Some will try to minimize what is happening. But none of that changes the reality of your position. Because this promotion is not based on their perception. It is based on divine decision. And what God has decided for you cannot be undone, my opinion. So as you step into this new level, remain grounded. Do not let the suddenness of your elevation cause you to lose the stability you built in your preparation. Do not let the visibility of your position distract you from the responsibility that comes with it. Because this is not just a reward. It is a responsibility. A responsibility to carry yourself with the same integrity that brought you here. A responsibility to remain aligned with the values that sustain you in silence. A responsibility to move with wisdom, even when everything around you is shifting quickly. And as June 22nd continues to unfold, you will begin to see this promotion more clearly. It will not always look dramatic. It will not always be loud. But it will be undeniable. You will feel the difference. You will see the alignment. You will recognize the doors that are opening without resistance. And in those moments, you will understand something that once felt uncertain. You were never overlooked. You were being prepared for something you could not have stepped into before. And now, the time has come. Type "I accept my divine promotion" in the comments. Blessing code 8888 is now being activated over your life. There is a reason this transformation in your life is not happening quietly anymore. There is a reason it is becoming visible, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. And it goes deeper than just your personal breakthrough. This moment is not only about you stepping into something greater, it is also about others witnessing what God has done in your life. Because some transformations are meant to be seen. You may have wondered, at times, why your journey felt so public, even when you tried to keep things private. Why certain struggles seemed to unfold in front of people who did not understand you. Why your silence was observed, your absence noticed, your shift questioned. It felt uncomfortable. It felt exposing. It felt like you were being watched without being supported. But now, that same visibility is being used for something entirely different. Because the people who saw you in your lowest moments are now positioned to see you in your highest ones. The same eyes that once scanned your life for signs of failure are now being forced to witness evidence of growth. And this is not accidental. This is intentional. Because sometimes, God allows people to see your process so they can recognize your transformation, not for your validation, but for His demonstration. Because your life is becoming a message that resilience is real, a message that silence does not mean defeat, a message that growth can happen even when it is not visible, and most importantly, a message that God's timing does not align with human assumptions. The ones who doubted you needed to see this. The ones who misunderstood you needed to see this. The ones who quietly counted you out needed to see what happens when God steps in. Because there are some lessons people will never learn through words. They only learn through observation. They needed to watch you not react. They needed to watch you not defend yourself. They needed to watch you walk away without explanation. Because now, when the shift becomes undeniable, they will have no choice but to connect what they saw then with what they see now. And that realization carries weight. Because it forces reflection. It forces accountability. It forces a quiet acknowledgement that they may have misjudged you. But here is what you must understand clearly. This moment is not about proving them wrong. It is about revealing what was right. Because if you turn this into a moment of validation, you will miss the purpose of the transformation. This is not about showing people that you were stronger than they thought. It is about showing what God can do when someone remains aligned, even when they are misunderstood. And that is a different kind of power, because it removes ego from the equation. It removes the need to compete. It removes the desire to compare. and it places the focus exactly where it belongs, on the transformation itself. But there is something else happening beneath the surface that you must recognize. Your transformation is creating distance, not because you are trying to separate yourself, but because not everyone can relate to the version of you that is emerging. Some people were comfortable with who you were when you were uncertain, when you were quiet, when you were navigating confusion. But now that you are clear, now that you are grounded, now that you are moving with intention, that same familiarity no longer exists. And that can make others uncomfortable. Not because you changed for the worse, but because you changed in a way that requires them to see themselves differently. And not everyone is ready for that. So as this transformation becomes more visible, you may notice subtle shifts in your relationships. Some connections will naturally fade. Some conversations will feel different. Some dynamics will no longer align the way they used to. And instead of questioning it, you must understand it. Growth creates separation, not out of rejection, but out of alignment. Because where you are going requires a different level of understanding, a different level of discipline, and a different level of awareness. And not everyone is meant to walk with you into that space. So let the transformation happen without resistance. Let the visibility unfold without fear. Let people see what they need to see. Because this moment is bigger than personal validation. It is a demonstration of what happens when you remain steady in the process. And as June 22nd continues to unfold, you will begin to feel it more clearly. The shift is no longer just internal. It is visible, it is real, and it is being witnessed. Type "My transformation" speaks for itself in the comments. Blessing code 9999 is now being activated over your life. As this transformation becomes visible, understand this. What God is doing through your life is not meant to stop with you. It is meant to reach those still waiting in darkness for a sign. Every seed you release into this mission becomes a light placed in someone else's path, a spark that awakens a soul that almost gave up. The word declares, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days," and this is God speaking directly into your moment, calling you into divine participation. I feel this deeply within. I am stepping into obedience right now. I am choosing to sow so others can receive what I just received. This is not a donation. This is a prophetic act, a response to what God is stirring in your spirit at this very moment. As you give through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, heaven records it as a seed that will return multiplied into your life. Do not delay this moment. So now, activate the flow. There is a moment that comes after the struggle, after the silence, after the misunderstanding, when everything begins to turn in your favor. A moment where what was hidden becomes visible, where what was questioned becomes confirmed, and where what was doubted becomes undeniable. And in that moment, something very delicate happens within you. Not around you, but within you. Because while everything on the outside is being restored, elevated, and aligned, your heart is being tested in a new way. This is the moment of vindication, and it is powerful. Because vindication brings clarity. It brings confirmation. It brings a quiet sense of justice that does not need to be announced. You begin to see things clearly. You begin to understand why certain people acted the way they did. You begin to recognize that what you felt all along was not wrong. And for the first time in a long time, everything starts to make sense. But here is what many people do not realize. Vindication can be just as dangerous as struggle if your heart is not guarded. Because in this moment, there is a temptation that rises quietly. A temptation to replay everything that happened. A temptation to revisit the moments where you were misunderstood, overlooked, or dismissed. A temptation to finally feel justified in ways that can slowly shift your focus away from where you are going. And if you are not careful, you can become emotionally attached to the past even while stepping into your future. You can begin to carry thoughts like, "Now they will see." You can begin to feel, "Now they will understand what I went through." You can begin to look for reactions instead of remaining grounded in your position. And that is where you must pause. Because your elevation was not given to you so you could revisit old wounds. It was given to you so you could move forward without them. You did not go through everything you endured just to arrive at a place where your focus is still tied to what hurt you. You did not develop strength, discipline, and clarity just to allow old emotions to resurface and distract you from your purpose. This is why guarding your heart becomes essential in this moment. Not because something is wrong, but because everything is finally going right. And when things begin to align, when doors begin to open, when recognition begins to come without effort, your heart must remain anchored in the same humility that carried you through your silent season. You must remember what grounded you when no one was watching. You must remember who you became when you had nothing to prove. Because the same mindset that sustained you in the dark must now sustain you in the light. And this is where true maturity reveals itself. Not in how you handled struggle, but in how you handle success. Because anyone can stay humble when they have nothing. But it takes awareness to remain grounded when everything begins to shift in your favor. And that is your assignment right now. To stay centered. To stay aligned. To stay focused on what is ahead, not what is behind. Because the truth is, not everyone who watches your vindication deserves access to your heart. Not everyone who sees your elevation is meant to reconnect with you. Not everyone who acknowledges your growth is aligned with your future. And if you allow emotion to guide you in this moment, you may reopen doors that were closed for a reason. You may revisit conversations that no longer need to happen. You may give energy to situations that no longer hold relevance in your life. And that is why discernment must guide you now more than ever. Because vindication is not an invitation to return. It is confirmation to move forward. So as this shift continues, as you begin to see the results of everything you endured, take a moment to check your heart. Not to question yourself, but to anchor yourself. Anchor yourself in gratitude, not pride. Anchor yourself in peace, not reaction. Anchor yourself in purpose, not validation. Because what is ahead of you requires clarity, not distraction. And as June 22nd continues to unfold, you will feel it. You will feel the difference between reacting and remaining still. You will feel the choice between looking back and moving forward. And in that moment, choose wisely. Because your future is not behind you. Your future is in front of you. And it is calling you to step into it fully, without carrying anything that no longer belongs. Type "I protect my heart" and move forward in the comments. Blessing code 1010 is now being activated over your life. There comes a point in every transformation where separation is no longer optional. It becomes necessary. Not forced, not dramatic, not loud, but clear. And that is where you are now. This is not the beginning of distance. This is the final confirmation of it. Because what God is doing in your life cannot coexist with everything that once surrounded you. You may have already started to feel it. The shift in conversations, the change in energy, the quiet realization that certain connections no longer feel the same. It is not always something you can explain. It is not always something you can point to directly. But it is there, a subtle awareness that you are no longer aligned with what once felt familiar. And that realization can feel uncomfortable at first. Because separation is not always about conflict. Sometimes it happens in peace. Sometimes It happens without arguments, without closure, without a clear ending. It simply becomes evident that where you are going and where they are staying are no longer the same place. And this is where many people struggle, because there is a natural desire to hold on, to maintain connections, to preserve what once was, to give people the benefit of the doubt, even when your spirit is telling you something has changed. You may find yourself questioning, wondering if you are being too distant, too cautious, too guarded. But understand this clearly. Growth requires separation. Not because you are better than anyone else, not because others are less than you, but because alignment matters. And not everyone is aligned with where you are being taken next. Some people were meant to walk with you in your previous season. They were part of your process. They were present during your growth. They may have even played a role in shaping who you became. But that does not mean they are meant to continue with you into your next level. And that truth can be difficult to accept, because you remember who they were to you. You remember the history. You remember the moments that felt genuine. But you must also recognize who you are becoming. Because if you try to carry old connections into a new season where they no longer fit, you will create friction within yourself. You will feel pulled in two directions. One part of you moving forward, the other part trying to hold on to what no longer aligns. And that tension, that internal conflict will slow you down. This is why separation is not rejection. It is redirection. It is not about pushing people away. It is about allowing space for what is meant to enter your life next. Because where you are going requires clarity. It requires focus. It requires a level of understanding that not everyone around you currently holds. And if you try to explain yourself to those who are not meant to understand, you will exhaust yourself. If you try to bring everyone with you, you will dilute your progress. If you try to maintain every connection out of obligation, you will compromise your alignment. And that is something you cannot afford to do at this stage. Because what is ahead of you is not ordinary. It is intentional. It is prepared. It is positioned specifically for who you are now, not who you used to be. So as this separation becomes clearer, do not resist it. Do not force reconnection where there is no longer alignment. Do not question your intuition when it tells you to create distance. Because that intuition is not random. It is guidance. It is protection. It is direction. And as June 22nd continues to unfold, you will begin to see this more clearly. You will notice who feels aligned and who feels distant. You will recognize which conversations bring clarity and which ones bring confusion. You will feel the difference between connections that support your growth and those that hold you in place. And in those moments, you must choose alignment, not comfort, not familiarity, not history. Alignment, because your future depends on it. And as this final separation takes place, understand something important. You are not losing people. You are making space. Space for new opportunities. Space for new connections. Space for new levels of understanding. Space for the life that is now being prepared for you. And that space is necessary. Because what God is about to place in your life cannot fit into a space that is already filled with what no longer belongs. So release without resistance. Move forward without hesitation. And trust that what is leaving your life now is doing so for a reason. Because what is coming next requires it. Type "I choose alignment" over attachment in the comments. Blessing code 1111 is now being activated over your life. There is a moment that comes when everything you have endured, everything you have carried in silence, everything you have worked through without recognition, begins to manifest in a way that cannot be hidden. It is not forced. It is not announced. It simply becomes evident. And when that moment arrives, you will not need to explain anything to anyone, because what is happening in your life will speak for itself. This is the season of overflow. Not just enough. Not just survival. Not just getting by. Overflow. And the reason it carries so much weight is because of where you came from. Because of what people saw before. Because of what they assumed about your future. They expected limitation. They expected delay. They expected you to remain in a place where your potential was never fully realized. But what is about to unfold does not match any of those expectations. It exceeds them. Because when God brings you into overflow, He does not do it quietly. He does not do it partially. He does not do it in a way that can be dismissed or overlooked. He does it in a way that creates contrast. A clear, undeniable difference between where you were and where you are now. And that contrast is what speaks. Not your words. Not your explanations. Not your past. But your present reality. Because there is something powerful about visible transformation. It forces people to reconsider everything they thought they understood. It challenges their assumptions. It interrupts the narrative they created about you. And it does so without you having to say a single thing. Your peace will speak. The way you carry yourself will speak. The stability in your life will speak. The consistency in your growth will speak. And the opportunities that begin to align with you will speak in ways that no explanation ever could. This is why this moment is so important. Because it marks the point where your life becomes the evidence. Evidence that your silence was not weakness. Evidence that your struggle was not failure. Evidence that your patience was not wasted. Everything you went through is now being translated into something visible, something tangible, something undeniable. And that is where the shift becomes complete. Because up until now, much of your journey has been internal. It has been about what you were learning, what you were overcoming, what you were developing within yourself. But now, that internal work is becoming external reality. And that is what creates overflow. Not just having more, but becoming more. Not just receiving, but being in a position where what flows through your life begins to impact everything around you. Because overflow is not just for you. It extends beyond you. It influences your environment and changes your relationships. It shifts the way people experience your presence. And most importantly, it creates opportunities that did not exist before. But with this overflow comes responsibility. Because it is easy to remain grounded when you are building. It is easy to stay focused when you are striving. But when things begin to align, when doors open without resistance, when provision meets you without struggle, that is when awareness becomes critical. Because overflow can either elevate you or distract you. It depends on how you handle it. And this is where you must remain intentional. Do not lose your discipline now that things are flowing. Do not lose your focus now that things are opening. Do not forget the mindset that carried you through your quiet season. Because the same principles that sustain you in lack must sustain you in abundance. The same awareness that kept you grounded in silence must keep you grounded in visibility. And as June 22nd continues to unfold, you will begin to see this overflow take shape. It may start in small ways, subtle changes, unexpected alignment, moments where things come together without effort, and then it will grow, expanding into areas of your life where you once felt limitation, replacing uncertainty with stability, replacing doubt with clarity, replacing struggle with flow. And in that moment, you will realize something that once felt distant. You are no longer trying to prove anything. You are no longer trying to convince anyone. You are simply living in what God has already established for you, and that reality speaks louder than words ever could. Type "My life is the evidence" in the comments. Blessing code 1212 is now being activated over your life. Now the moment has come. Not the moment you imagined. Not the moment you tried to predict. But the moment that was prepared for you long before you ever understood what you were walking through. This is not just another step in your journey. This is the moment where everything converges. The silence, the struggle, the separation, the growth, the discipline. All of it leads here. To this call. To this invitation. To this seat that had been waiting for you. Because the truth is, the table was never the question. Your readiness was. There were times when you thought you were ready before you actually were. Times when you wanted things to happen faster, sooner, easier. Times when you questioned why it felt like everything was delayed. But now you see it differently. And now you understand that if certain doors had opened earlier, you would not have been able to carry what came with them. If certain opportunities had aligned before your transformation, they would have overwhelmed you instead of elevating you. And that is why this moment is different. Because now, you are not stepping into something you have to chase. You are stepping into something that has already been prepared. The table is set. The position is established. The alignment is complete. And now, the only thing left is for you to take your seat. But this is where one final decision must be made. Because stepping into your seat requires you to fully release who you used to be. Not just the struggle, not just the pain, but also the identity you carried in those seasons. A version of you that felt like you had to prove yourself. The version of you that questioned your worth. The version of you that tolerated less because you were unsure of what you deserved. That version cannot sit at this table, because this table requires certainty. It requires clarity. It requires a level of confidence that does not come from ego, but from alignment. You are no longer the one waiting to be chosen. You are the one who has already been chosen. And that shift must be fully accepted. Because if you hesitate now, if you second guess now, if you shrink now, you will delay what has already been prepared for you. Not because it is not yours, but because you have not fully stepped into it. So this is your moment to decide. To stop looking back. To stop questioning what you already feel. To stop waiting for confirmation from people who were never part of your assignment. And to finally say yes to what has been waiting for you. Because once you sit at this table, everything changes. Not just externally, but internally. You move differently. You think differently. You carry yourself differently. You no longer operate from fear of losing. You operate from confidence in what is already secured. And that is what separates this moment from every other one you have experienced before. This is not temporary. This is not uncertain. This is established. And as June 22nd reaches its peak, you will feel it fully. The shift is complete. The preparation is finished. The position is ready. And the only thing left is your acceptance. So take your seat. Without fear. Without hesitation. Without looking back. Because everything you went through has led you here. And everything ahead of you begins now. Type "I take my seat" in the comments. Blessing code 1313 is now activated over your life. As you step into your seat, understand this sacred truth. Your obedience does not end with receiving. It multiplies through giving. Every seed you release into this mission becomes oil poured into another soul still waiting for their moment of awakening. The Lord declares, "Whoever sows generously will also reap generously." And this is not distant scripture. It is God speaking directly into your now, inviting you into divine partnership. I feel this deeply within my spirit. I am called to act, to sow, to become a vessel that carries this light further than I can see. This is not just support. This is a prophetic response to what God has just done in your life. As you give through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, heaven marks it as a seed that will open doors, release favor, and expand your territory. Do not hesitate. So now, activate the next level of your harvest.